What most seniors don't realize is that the potassium supplement sitting in their kitchen right now could be doing one of two completely opposite things. It could be doing almost nothing at all, or if used the wrong way, it could push them toward a medical emergency they never saw coming. And that's exactly why this topic matters so much, because when people hear that potassium helps lower blood pressure, they assume more is better, more is safer, more is smarter. That assumption is where trouble begins. Today, I'm going to show you which potassium-rich supplements actually deserve your attention, which ones are mostly marketing, and which one is so powerful that it can change blood pressure numbers in a surprisingly short time when used correctly. I'm Dr. James L. Anderson, and if you're over 60, I need you to stay with me until the very end of this video, because the number one potassium option on this list is probably not the one you expect. It's not the most expensive bottle, it's not the one with the flashiest label, and it's not the one most supplement companies want you to buy. But before I reveal that, you need to understand something that could protect you immediately. Potassium is not like taking a basic vitamin and forgetting about it. Potassium changes fluid balance, nerve signaling, muscle contraction, and the electrical rhythm of your heart. So yes, it can help blood pressure, but in the wrong person, in the wrong dose, it can also become dangerous. Let me start with Dorothy, because her story captures the confusion almost perfectly. Dorothy was 72, careful, disciplined, and honestly the kind of patient every doctor hopes for. She had mild high blood pressure, and she'd heard from a neighbor that potassium was the natural answer. So she went to the store, bought a heart support gummy with potassium on the front, and started taking it every day. 3 weeks later, she was disappointed. Her blood pressure hadn't moved. Not one meaningful point. She felt fooled. She thought potassium didn't work. But the real problem wasn't potassium. The real problem was the product. Each serving gave her such a tiny amount that it had almost no realistic chance of changing her daily intake in a meaningful way. This is where most people get misled right out of the gate. So let's begin with supplement number 7, the one I consider the most overrated on the shelf: potassium gummies and multivitamins. They sound comforting, they sound easy, they sound like a harmless daily fix. But when you actually turn the bottle around and read the label, what you often find is a dose so small that it barely nudges total daily potassium intake. Many over-the-counter products contain around 99 milligrams per serving, sometimes even less in blended formulas. That might sound impressive until you realize healthy daily potassium intake is measured in the thousands of milligrams, not the hundreds. So if your blood pressure problem is related to high sodium and chronically low potassium intake, these tiny products are often more symbolic than therapeutic. They make people feel proactive without actually moving the needle. Now, I don't want to be unfair to these products. They do have a place. If someone simply wants a small nutritional bump, or if a doctor wants them to add a little potassium carefully, a low-dose product may be reasonable. But the mistake is expecting a gummy or a generic multivitamin to perform like a true blood pressure strategy. That's where disappointment happens, and disappointment matters, because once people think a natural approach failed, they often give up entirely. They stop looking at the bigger picture. They stop fixing sodium. They stop eating better. They stop tracking their readings. They conclude the whole idea was nonsense, when in reality, they never used an effective version in the first place. That is exactly why this list matters. We're separating the shelf fillers from the options that actually deserve respect. Supplement number 6 is another one that looks healthier than it really is. Electrolyte drinks and hydration powders marketed for daily wellness. Let me tell you about Frank. Frank was 69, active, drank these colorful electrolyte mixes every afternoon, and genuinely believed he was supporting his heart. The label mentioned potassium, magnesium, minerals, hydration, all the right buzzwords. But when we looked closely, here's what we found. Yes, there was some potassium, But there was also a meaningful amount of sodium, sometimes sugar, and nowhere near enough potassium to make it a serious blood pressure tool. So Frank was taking a product that sounded cardiologist approved, but was really built more for taste and branding than for hypertension control. This happens constantly, and supplement companies know most people never compare the numbers. Here's the deeper problem with those products. Blood pressure, especially in older adults, is often sodium sensitive. That means the body reacts strongly to salt. So if you're taking a drink mix because it contains potassium, but it's also bringing extra sodium into the picture, you may be pushing with one hand and pulling back with the other. That doesn't mean all electrolyte products are bad. Some are useful in special situations, like heat exposure, vomiting, or dehydration, and some low-sodium versions can be reasonable. But if your primary goal is lowering blood pressure at home, many of these products are simply too diluted in potassium and too cluttered with other ingredients to rank very high. They're not evil. They're just not the quiet blood pressure weapon most seniors think they're buying. Now we reach supplement number 5, potassium gluconate. This is one of the more common forms people find in tablets or capsules, and compared with gummies and multivitamins, it's at least a more serious product. Louise, a 74-year-old retired librarian, came to see me after reading that potassium could help offset the effects of a salty diet. She didn't want anything extreme. She wanted something simple, measured, and stomach-friendly. Potassium gluconate fit that psychology perfectly. It felt gentle. It felt controlled. And for someone like Louise, that matters because consistency matters. A supplement only helps if the person can actually tolerate it and stick with it. But here's the truth you need to know. Potassium gluconate can be useful, yet it still often comes in relatively modest amounts per pill. That means potassium gluconate is best thought of as a bridge, not a miracle. It may help someone who truly needs a modest increase and is doing everything else right. It may make sense for a person whose clinician has reviewed their medications, confirmed their kidneys are working well, and wants a cautious first step. But if someone is eating a highly processed, high-salt diet and believes a couple of small potassium gluconate tablets will somehow overpower all of that, they are expecting far too much. Blood pressure doesn't respond to wishful thinking. It responds to physiology. And physiology cares about the total pattern: sodium intake, potassium intake, kidney function, medications, stress, sleep, weight, and whether the product you're taking is strong enough to matter. That's why this option earns a middle ranking, not a top one. Supplement number 4 is potassium citrate, and this is where things begin to get more interesting. Potassium citrate gets attention because it's used in real medical settings, especially when doctors are thinking about kidney stone prevention in certain patients. But it also matters here because it's another form of potassium that can help raise intake when a person truly needs support. Eleanor was 70 and had borderline high blood pressure, plus a history of kidney stones. She had heard about potassium but was afraid of harsh products. Her doctor chose potassium citrate carefully because it fit her broader situation better. Over time, with improved diet and monitoring, her blood pressure numbers became more stable. But notice the key phrase there, with monitoring. Not because she wandered through a supplement aisle and guessed correctly. That difference changes everything. Potassium citrate can be a respectable option when it's selected for the right person and for the right reason. It may be easier for some stomachs. It may fit patients who need a clinician-guided increase in potassium while addressing other issues. But I need to stop here and tell you something very clearly, because this is where seniors get into trouble. The form of potassium does not erase the risk of too much potassium. I don't care how natural the branding sounds. I don't care if the bottle says gentle, clean, or doctor-inspired. If your kidneys don't clear potassium well, or if you're taking medications that cause potassium to build up, potassium citrate can become just as serious as any other form. The danger is not just the label. The danger is the mismatch between the product and the person. And before I reveal supplement number 3, I need you to mentally check whether any of these warnings describe you. If you have kidney disease, if you've ever been told your potassium ran high, if you take lisinopril, benazepril, enalapril, losartan, valsartan, spironolactone, amiloride, triamterene, or similar medicines, or if you live with heart failure or diabetes with kidney involvement, do not casually start taking potassium supplements because a headline made them sound harmless. This is not fear-mongering. This is physiology. Your body must get rid of extra potassium. If it can't, potassium accumulates. And when potassium accumulates, it may not cause obvious symptoms at first. That silent buildup is what makes it so deceptive. Sometimes people feel almost normal until the heart rhythm becomes the thing that announces the problem. Now we come to supplement number 3, potassium bicarbonate or mixed potassium mineral powders. These products are often marketed as alkalizing, balancing, energizing, or bone supportive. And because of that, many people underestimate how medically active they can be. Harold, 71, started using one because he thought it was basically a harmless wellness powder. He mixed it into water every morning, felt virtuous, and never mentioned it to his doctor because it didn't seem like a real supplement to him. That is exactly the kind of sentence that makes physicians nervous. Because real medical problems often begin with products people don't consider medical. Potassium bicarbonate can absolutely raise potassium intake. In some people, that may support blood pressure improvement, especially if their intake was low to begin with. But it still carries the same fundamental rule. The kidneys must be able to handle it. What makes this category tricky is that it often hides inside broader wellness language. You'll see pH support, recovery blend, mineral balance, things that sound soft and harmless. But once potassium is inside the formula in meaningful amounts, the soft language stops mattering. The biology is still real. These products may be worthwhile for selected individuals, especially under guidance, but they are not better simply because they feel less pharmaceutical. In fact, sometimes that softer image makes them riskier because people double up. They use the powder, then the electrolyte drink, then the salt substitute, then the multivitamin, and suddenly they're layering potassium from 4 directions without realizing it. That stacking behavior is one of the most common supplement mistakes I see in older adults who are honestly trying to do the right thing. Supplement number 2 is where the evidence starts getting much stronger. Potassium chloride. And this one deserves your full attention because it appears in 2 very different worlds. First, it appears in more direct potassium supplements, including some medically supervised forms. Second, and much more importantly for home blood pressure, it appears in potassium-based salt substitutes. But let's first talk about potassium chloride itself as a supplement. This is the form used in many of the clinical studies that showed blood pressure can come down, especially in people who already have hypertension and especially when sodium intake is high. Walter, 67, had stubborn blood pressure, loved canned soups, deli meats, and salted snacks, and kept asking me if he needed a stronger natural pill. What he really needed, was not a fancier label. He needed a form that matched the evidence. When potassium chloride works, it often works for a very logical reason. It helps shift the sodium-potassium balance in a healthier direction. Potassium encourages the body to excrete more sodium through urine. It helps blood vessel walls relax. It changes the internal chemistry that drives blood pressure upward in salt-sensitive people. That's why research keeps finding that people with hypertension can see modest but meaningful reductions when potassium intake goes up appropriately. But here's the catch, and it's a big one. The doses used in clinical research are often much larger than what people casually buy over the counter. And once you move into meaningful amounts, you move into meaningful supervision. Potassium chloride can irritate the stomach, cause abdominal upset, and in the wrong context contribute to dangerously high potassium. So yes, it's evidence-backed. No, it is not a casual do-it-yourself toy. This is where a lot of viewers expect me to say, great, then go buy potassium chloride tablets and you're done. Absolutely not. Because potassium chloride as a straight supplement is powerful enough to deserve respect, and respect means restraint. It means not guessing. It means not copying some stranger online. It means understanding your labs, your medications, your kidney function, and your starting blood pressure pattern. Walter learned that lesson beautifully. Once he stopped chasing flashy supplement claims and started a supervised plan that reduced sodium while improving potassium intake, his blood pressure finally settled down. Not because of one magic tablet, because the strategy became coherent. That word matters. Coherent. Every successful blood pressure plan is coherent. Every dangerous one is chaotic. And the number one option on this list is powerful precisely because it fixes two problems at once. So here it is. Supplement number one, the most effective potassium-rich option for lowering blood pressure at home for many otherwise suitable adults, is not a capsule at all. It is a potassium-based salt substitute, usually one that replaces part of the sodium chloride with potassium chloride. I know, that surprises people. They expect number one to be a boutique supplement in a glossy bottle. But from a blood pressure standpoint, this option can be uniquely effective because it attacks the real imbalance. It doesn't just add potassium, it also reduces sodium, and that double action matters more than almost anything else when you're dealing with the typical modern diet. For many households, the salt shaker, the seasoning habit, the soups, the eggs, the vegetables, the table salt, that's where the pressure problem quietly keeps getting reinforced every single day. Let me tell you about Miriam, because her case is exactly why I rank this first. Miriam was 76, thoughtful, determined, and honestly exhausted by complicated advice. One person told her to take magnesium, another told her beetroot powder, another said garlic capsules, another said potassium tablets. She felt buried under bottles. When we finally simplified her plan, one of the biggest changes was swapping her regular table salt for a potassium-based salt substitute that her physician approved. She didn't change because it sounded trendy. She changed because the strategy made sense. Every time she seasoned food, she was quietly lowering sodium exposure while giving herself some potassium support. Over the next stretch of time, her home readings improved. Not overnight, not magically, but steadily. That's what real cardiovascular progress usually looks like. Quiet, boring, repeatable improvement. And that's exactly why this option is so powerful. Research on potassium-enriched salt substitutes has been impressive enough that it deserves far more public attention than it gets. In large studies, people using these substitutes saw lower blood pressure, and some studies showed reductions in stroke risk, major cardiovascular events, and even death. Think about that for a moment. We're not talking about a trendy powder influencer of the month. We're talking about a kitchen-level change that can affect the biology driving hypertension every single day. That's why I say the number one option isn't sexy, but it is serious. However, and this is absolutely non-negotiable, this number one option is not appropriate for everyone. If you have serious kidney disease, if you use potassium-sparing diuretics, if you already take potassium supplements, or if your clinician has warned you about high potassium, you must not improvise with salt substitutes on your own. Now let me tell you the most dangerous misunderstanding of all, because this is the part almost no supplement video explains well. People hear potassium lowers blood pressure, and they picture a straight line. More potassium equals lower pressure. More supplement equals more benefit. That is not how the body works. The relationship is more intelligent, more conditional, and more limited than that. If your intake is low and your diet is sodium heavy, improving potassium may help a lot. If your intake is already adequate, piling on extra may offer very little, and if you're in the wrong medical category, too much can hurt you. That's why the smartest blood pressure strategy is never reckless supplementation. It is precise correction. You correct the imbalance you actually have in the amount your body can safely handle, while keeping an eye on the factors that determine whether it helps or harms. This is also why some seniors get frustrated when they try potassium and nothing changes. Usually one of four things happened. First, the dose was too tiny to matter. Second, the product came bundled with sodium or sugar, canceling much of the benefit. Third, the person expected a supplement to overpower a salty diet. Or fourth, and this is common, their blood pressure problem had other powerful drivers such as untreated sleep apnea, excess weight, chronic stress, medication effects, kidney disease, or simply inaccurate home blood pressure technique. Potassium can help, but it is not a magician. It works inside a system, and when that system is mismanaged, people blame the supplement instead of understanding the larger picture. That's why the best videos on this topic don't just hand you names, they teach you how to think about the names safely. So let me give you the gold standard home plan, the one I wish every senior would follow before buying a single potassium product. Step 1, review your medications and conditions. If you are on an ACE inhibitor, an ARB, spironolactone, amiloride, triamterene, or you have kidney disease, heart failure, or a history of high potassium, do not start with shopping. Start with a conversation. Step 2, know your real blood pressure pattern. That means measuring correctly, seated, rested, arm supported, same times of day, and keeping a log. Step 3, look at your diet honestly. If it is heavy in processed meats, canned foods, restaurant meals, frozen dinners, crackers, chips, or packaged soups, sodium is probably fighting you harder than any supplement can rescue you. Step 4. For otherwise healthy adults whose clinicians agree, prioritize potassium from food first, because food comes with fiber, volume, satiety, and a whole pattern that supports vascular health. That means vegetables, beans, potatoes, yogurt, fruit, and other potassium-rich foods, not just a pill bottle. Now, yes, I know this video is about supplements, and we've ranked them. But the reason number 1 was a salt substitute is because it behaves like a strategic environmental change, not just another capsule. Step 5. If a supplement is still needed, choose one form deliberately and change one variable at a time. Not 3, not 5, 1. That way, if your blood pressure improves, or your stomach reacts, or your labs shift, you actually know what caused it. Random stacking creates confusion, and confusion is the enemy of safe home treatment. Step 6. Watch for warning signs, but understand that warning signs can be subtle. High potassium can cause nausea, vomiting, weakness, fainting, muscle problems, or an irregular heartbeat, but sometimes it causes almost no symptoms at all until it becomes serious. That's why some people need blood testing rather than guesswork. Step 7. Give the strategy enough time to show a pattern. Don't take one supplement for 2 days and declare victory or failure. Look for trends over 2 to 4 weeks while keeping everything else as stable as possible. Consistency reveals truth. Random dabbling hides it. And if you ever feel lightheaded, weak, or unwell after making changes, don't keep pushing because you're emotionally committed to a natural approach. Natural is not the same thing as safe. Safe is safe. That distinction can save your life. Now, there is another group I need to speak to directly, because they are especially vulnerable to bad supplement advice. If you're taking a water pill and someone told you, "Oh, just grab any potassium supplement," please slow down. Some diuretics lower potassium, others conserve it. Some people genuinely need potassium support, others absolutely do not.